And everyone, welcome back to another episode of In the Lounge here on hoopslounge.com with Marc Griffin, Justin Rowan, and myself, Phil Boileau. All of our Twitter accoutrements will be in the description below, so you can yell at us later. Guys, this has been another busy week in the NBA. Maybe I'll start us off with a little storyline just because, living in Canada, Toronto Raptors are dear to a lot of people's hearts, and DeMar DeRozan opted out of his contract. We get it, right? Get more money. Do we think this is a smart move, and do we think he's going to be in a Raptors jersey next year?
I mean, opting out makes sense. His options are basically opt into making $10 million next year, or he could opt out and get potentially, well, as high as $29 million a year. But he's obviously getting over $20 million a year. So obviously, it's a smart decision for him. It's tough. I mean, I've been one of the biggest DeRozan critics out there, and his play this season has been dramatically better. His shot selection is way better. He's not taking those Kobe contested shots that he was hitting at a terrible rate. He's getting to the line more, and his improved handle is allowing him to blow by guys on the perimeter. He's actually able to use his athleticism. So, I mean, if he keeps this up, there's no doubt in my mind he's a max player. Obviously, you hope that he takes a bit of a pay cut, but I think the Raptors are kind of in a situation where they're going to need to pay him. Whether or not he wants to be a Raptor, I think he said all the things that would make you think that
he wants to be a Raptor.
Yeah. So,
although we've heard that storyline before from players.
Right. So, I mean, you have to be open to the possibility. I mean, the Lakers want to make him the replacement for Kobe Bryant, and that's his hometown team. Brooklyn's going to be after him. So there's going to be a lot of teams willing to go after him. I think unless Masai Ujiri has some sort of other deal lined up for some sort of star player, which, I mean, the free agency class isn't deep with stars, so I would consider that unlikely. Unless that is the case, I would be surprised to see Toronto not attempt to shell out for him.
Yeah, I think the equation is simple. The TV money's coming in this coming summer, and DeMar wants to get paid. Some other team will pay him. Probably end up closer to Southern California, I'm guessing.
Oh, so you don't think he stays with the Raptors, Mark?
No.
No?
You don't? Interesting. Well, where do you see him ending up? Is it the Lakers? Is that your kind of destination?
Yeah, I mean, I would really see him in Southern California. I think that's a destination for him. Who knows, man? I mean, just off the top of my head, maybe a team like Dallas would go after him if they have money to free up. I'd see him in the West.
Interesting, because I think a lot of people would see him staying with Toronto just because, they've been building and not wanting to rebuild. I don't know. I can kind of see it both ways. Like, I can kind of see them signing, maybe trading early next year. I don't know. I think when it comes to, the whole trade world, it's what kind of assets you have. And I'm not sure that Masai allows this asset to just walk right away. Like, does this make sense to you guys that maybe they would sign him up and then allow him to play kind of half a year until next year's All-Star game and then kind of shell him out once he's on his 5-year, because then he'll have more of a trade value?
No, not really. I never think it's in a team's best interest to trade a guy once he is on the 5-year deal, especially in the first year. Because when you sign a guy to a 5-year deal, it's not just from the team's perspective. Like, you're committing to the player, and if you turn around and trade that guy after he's committed to live there for 5 years and to play for the team, like that's going to deter other free agents from committing there long term.
Yeah, and already that's tough for the Toronto Raptors. Apart from that, Mark, what else do you got this week that's popping up?
LeBron talking about the letter about coming home and saying, he didn't mention Andrew Wiggins because he didn't know the kid. That really bothers me. I don't believe one word of it, and there's a lot of evidence. Otherwise, Justin, I really wanted your thoughts on that one.
He has to say that to avoid collusion. I don't think he needed to say I didn't really know the kid, but the Kevin Love trade, I mean, a lot of people kind of acknowledge this was in place basically from the moment Wiggins was drafted, and it was used to pitch LeBron to coming back to Cleveland. He doesn't come back to Cleveland if that trade isn't in place, even with the star power Kyrie Irving. And Wiggins wasn't the only one that wasn't included in the letter. Anthony Bennett was excluded as well. So the two guys that were involved in that deal weren't included in the letter. If there's some sort of agreement beforehand, before it's legal, the Cavs are going to lose draft picks and things of that nature. Does anybody believe LeBron didn't know who Wiggins was? No, of course not. He was at his camp. LeBron.
Well, he's got a summer home under many rocks, right? So maybe he was just vacationing and he totally forgot who this guy was.
Well, I mean, Wiggins, he showed out at LeBron's camp. There's video of that. There's video of LeBron, I believe, exiting the locker room after a Heat game, dapping up Wiggins, who was standing there, and saying, "Hey, man, how's your season coming along? Keep it up. Keep up the good work and all that." I mean, he knew who he was. I think it's more just to avoid the collusion aspect that was potentially there. But the trade was predicated upon LeBron agreeing to go to the Cavs. Even though the timelines are weird, that was the case. So it doesn't really surprise me that he didn't say, "Oh yeah, well I left him out of the letter because the trade was going to go down."
No, wait a minute.
Yeah,
LeBron James, Collusion, Miami Heat. Have we heard this storyline before? Anyways, I digress.
Well, I mean, my favorite was Pat Riley complaining about it when Pat Riley.
You were the direct beneficiary of the last Collusion, so maybe just keep this one under wraps.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, and I got to say the telltale sign there was that Wiggins had never got any responses from his text to LeBron that summer. Do you really think a situation like that, KG would not be responding to Karl Anthony Towns' text? It was fishy to me. Mm-hmm. We all knew he was going.
Yeah, and we have something interesting, some breaking news for the podcast. The Nets have fired both Billy King and Lionel Hollins. So there is no leadership in place right now.
Reset button in Brooklyn.
Yep, basically. So Jared Jack's out for the year. Brook Lopez is still healthy. Their first round pick, Ryan Hollis Jefferson. Yeah. Sorry, I always get his name mixed up. There's too many guys with similar names. He's out for the year, I believe, with a torn ACL or some sort of leg injury. Joe Johnson, they're apparently trying to trade before the deadline. Doubt they find a suitor to take on that contract, but if they don't, the plan was to buy him out. Who knows now, with the GM and coach out of the equation, if the buyout process is sped up, or if they choose to keep him just altogether and just kind of eat the salary for the rest of the year. What do you guys think of the Nets?
I think it's whenever you have to mention Jared Jack as a key piece who may or may not be in the lineup, you're in a lot of trouble and you're pretending a lot. And they have Andrea Bargnani, so you're guaranteeing some losses in that column.
Are you saying
just the train wreck? Train wreck.
I think they have to hit the reset button personally on this team. And I mean, it's tough to do with the lack of first round picks because of the former regime. Like, if I was the 76ers, I'd be like, sure, give me Joe Johnson, give me all your first round picks, and I'll take them. Mm-hmm. But it's tough. It's a tough trade to make considering they had to give up all those guys for players that aren't even on this team anymore.
Right. And, I mean, it's so tough to say they need to hit the reset button because if you tear it all down right now, you don't get a draft pick. Like, it's going to Boston. You have an unprotected pick going to Boston. So they're not getting an answer this year. God, like, I just don't even know where...
But if you're not getting your pick either way, what does it matter? Like...
Well, I mean, I guess the theory would be you try to win and develop as much as you can this season so you don't give Boston a better pick, right?
But who's your future on this team? I mean,
Lopez and Thad Young, I guess?
Rondé Hollis Jefferson. Sorry, I might just look this up officially. You know, like, I think he'll be a nice role player. I don't know if he's got a future. And look, I agree with you. Brook Lopez is playing amazing, but he's also 27, right? So
Yeah, I know.
if this is a team that really needs to rebuild, 27 is not the age that you want to start some guy with. I realize guys get contracts at that age, but Brook Lopez needs to be on a team that is going to contend fairly soon. So personally, I would see him as a trade high candidate just because, of the situation they're in. I mean, if who is their future? I mean, I'm just looking up and down this list. They're pretty old considering they're this bad. With Thaddeus Young at 27 again. Thomas Robinson maybe at 24? I like him, but Shane Larkin? Come on, this team doesn't have talent. They're missing a crucial piece to the development. I mean, I think tearing it down almost doesn't matter what you do. Just allow some guys with some potential to get minutes because your veterans aren't doing it for you. It's just that simple.
Yeah, and they don't have any trade picks either, so that's they put the nail in the coffin already. They're not going to be able to do much for the next 4 or 5 years. Unless
they maximize on the Thad Young, Brook Lopez kind of thing, just go the right route. I can't think of any situations now. I mean, Brook Lopez, he plays a position that's a bit of a dinosaur position, but he still has shown to have value this year, obviously. So, would Brook Lopez on a team I don't know, the Thunder for Enes Kanter just make a silly trade, just get a bunch younger that way, or things like that.
Well, yeah, and I actually saw this kind of proposed earlier. Brook Lopez landing in Dallas would make a lot of sense.
For sure.
Maybe Dallas gives up a pick. I mean, Dallas is able to kind of mortgage their future a little bit because, I mean, they're having a surprising season. They're playing well. Dirk's kind of at the end of the career. They owe it to him to kind of give it their best shot. So maybe they trade Dwight Powell and a first-round pick or something like that, so the Nets get a little bit more in the cupboard. Something like that might make sense. Thad Young, re-signing him was kind of surprising to me, given the state of the Nets. Feels like Thad Young's been around forever. I remember him on the Andre Iguodala Sixers. It's just crazy how long he's been around, and yet he's still so young. But
one of those guys
I'm with you, Phil.
I think it's because he's one of those guys who came in so young, but no one gave him a lot of publicity. It's kind of like Amir Johnson. I think people are surprised how he's not 37 years old with the amount of minutes and such he's had. But anyways, I think this team is in a precarious situation where I don't think they can afford to just keep doing what they're doing. They're paying a lot of money for a team that's losing a lot of games.
I agree.
But Justin, just jump off this topic. What do you got that piqued your interest this week?
I mean, the most interesting thing to me that kind of came out this week was there's been so much talk, and maybe I'd enjoy the Warriors more than I do now if people weren't so prone to hyperbole with them and exaggerating. I think Draymond Green is a fantastic player. I really do. I hate rankings asking if someone's top 10, top 15, because that's so arbitrary, right? Sometimes the league won't be deep enough that there is 10 top 10 players, or sometimes there's more than that, right? To me, Draymond Green is that third tier. I don't think he's LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and I don't think he's the second tier with guys like Paul George, Anthony Davis, and those guys that are stars but trying to break in.
I said that he was better than Blake Griffin.
And that's where I have a problem. He's not better than Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin was the best player. He is the best player on the Clippers at this point, as good as Chris Paul was. Blake Griffin basically single-handedly beat the Spurs in the playoffs last year with Chris Paul hobbled. Machine. Yeah, he's a triple-double machine. He can do it as a number one option. He's got the length. And then I saw some talk. People are saying that Draymond Green is better than Kawhi Leonard.
What?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is where I think we got with Rajon Rondo. Rondo was, in my opinion, in that same kind of tier. Just outside the top 10, not a superstar or a star player, but a fantastic all-star. But the system maximized every one of his unique talents, and he was a triple-double machine. I think Draymond Green. I think he's a better player than Rondo was, but I
He's
think
a product, more than a player.
And yeah, he's not a product of the system like solely. Like he is a legitimate great player, but I think his talent has been fully maximized. He has trouble finishing over length at times. That issue isn't there because Steph Curry and Klay Thompson space the floor for him. Harrison Barnes as well. He's improved his shot. He deserves tons of credit for that. But at the same time, I don't think we should put him over guys that are kind of the straw that stirs the drink, so to speak. And I think that's what guys like Blake Griffin, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, like these are legitimate number one guys. I think people need to stop looking solely at numbers and just kind of understand the context of the situation these players are in.
Yeah, we talk about Draymond every single week on the show. Do you guys realize that?
Yeah, I know.
He's a popular name in the world of the NBA. But Mark, if you want to switch topics quickly, because I think we all kind of agree there. What was piquing your interest this week?
Well, here's something. The Spurs right now are on a 22-game home winning streak, and I was curious to see what the record was. Do you guys know who's the number one?
What's that?
The number one in the West?
No, history, home winning streak.
No idea.
God, that's tough.
I'm going to say 22 out of a number I completely picked out of.
It's longer than that because I know the Cavs went 39-2 once at home, and that was the second best record. It's Boston, right?
It's the Bulls 95-96 with Michael and Scotty. They made 44 straight. It is actually over 2 consecutive seasons. You know how the NBA likes to have their records go around different seasons. And the number 2 was really interesting to me. It was 40 consecutive wins by the Orlando Magic in 95-96.
Oh.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
There's some weird numbers for that one. Wow. Hey, speaking of weird numbers, there's this guy I've been kind of praising his name for a bit, and I thought he'd be a bit of a breakout player this year. Give me your thoughts on Julius Randle, guys, because his name is popping up more and more as the future. Because that backcourt in LA gets Jordan Crawford and D'Angelo Russell gets all the hoopla, but Randle's quietly been putting up numbers off the bench. How do you guys see this player from Kentucky?
I can't evaluate anyone until they get rid of Byron Scott. I think he's a really talented player. He's almost like a bigger Lamar Odom. There's a lot of promise there, but I mean the Lakers came out and said that this season. They don't care about the development of their young players. They're not going to start focusing on that until Kobe's gone. This year's all about Kobe, so they're wasting this season, and I think they're wasting a year of development for Randle and also, well, the whole team, Clarkson, D'Angelo Russell, like all these guys. I think they're wasting a year of their development.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. I do like Randle's attitude. He seems to really not back down from the stars on the other teams. I wanted to bring up another guy, a rookie whose name is starting to pop up. Devin Booker has been playing really great ball for Phoenix the last few weeks.
I'm brushing off my shoulder as you speak right now because I may have called this preseason. just saying.
Yeah.
You can look back on our preview for the Phoenix Suns. I thought this guy was going to be a really nice pick, and I totally agree with you, and carry on.
He was lighting up Gordon in Miami the other night. I mean, he's playing pretty poised for a rookie.
Yeah, no, he's a lights out shooter. He's finding his way. Maybe Justin, if you had to kind of, and I know some guys like doing this, some guys don't, but if you had to do like an NBA kind of comparison at this point, once you've seen him, log a couple minutes, you're seeing more of we'll do the boring comparison, JJ Redick, Klay Thompson's, or is there another player that makes more sense out there?
That's interesting. Those comps kind of work. I kind of like almost Eric Gordon or Bradley Beal, like kind of what those guys potentially were. I really don't like doing these comparisons, but yeah, I think those are the type of players I would gravitate to a little bit more than J.J. Redick or a Bradley Beal, or Klay Thompson.
Okay, so maybe I can put it in a different way. On a team, should he be your, like, ideally, he maximizes potential, your second, third, or maybe even fourth best player? Like, where does he land that kind of discussion?
I think if he reaches his potential, you're probably talking about a number 2 guy, or a very good number 3 guy. So maybe like a Klay Thompson caliber player if everything completely maximizes, which there's absolutely no guarantee of. But yeah, I think you're talking about someone with that kind of upside.
Okay, and working in Phoenix, just because we were talking Lakers before, who's had the larger internal implosion, Suns or Lakers?
I'm going to say Suns. The Lakers are a disaster, but they came from being a disaster, and I think they have some upside in the future. Eric Bledsoe, another injury. It's almost like we're dealing with another Derrick Rose situation potentially with this many knee injuries. Tyson Chandler disgruntled there. They had a good young core, and I think they've ruined that. Markieff Morris likely to get moved this season. I think Phoenix is a disaster, and they're going to bottom out, and their next glory days are probably further away than the Lakers.
Yeah, and Mark, we had some recent news with the Toronto Raptors, DeMar Carroll having his knee injury, so having to obviously jump and put James Johnson in the starting lineup. For the Raptors fans out there, where do you feel this team stands? Because we started the show off talking to DeMar DeRozan. He's really upped his game. Kyle Lowry obviously playing very well. I think they were both, last time I checked, like top 6 or 7 for All-Star voting or somewhere in that ranking. So obviously they're both getting some recognition out there. Do you think the Raptors still have what it takes, even with this newer lineup? JV's back, looking like he's playing all right. What's your feelings on the Raptors?
Well, I got all-star voting right now. I think Ja is above Dirk for Dallas. So, say what you want about that. It's nice to see JJ get minutes. I mean, he's been that mystery guy who's been, in the doghouse since large chunk of last season. He's the guy who cocked the hammer back on Andre Drummond. So to have that type of energy guy, both offensively and defensively, to fill in that role. I mean, Carroll that's the uniqueness of what he brings to that team, especially in practice. I'm told it's a major blow for them. So to have DV back now, I think they're leading their division, so they just got to keep rolling, and they'll get momentum going into the All-Star break where they'll be the host. That's something kind of an interesting thing to bring up. They're going to be kind of worn out by 5 or 6 days of kind of hosting the entire NBA, where a lot of other guys will be able to rest. So see them having a bit of a lapse into mid to late February.
Mm-hmm. I think Toronto's probably in the best position, assuming they get either the second or third seed. I think they're in the best position out of all the teams kind of in that second tier to make the Eastern Conference Finals. I think the Bulls are a bit of a disaster. I just don't believe in any of the other teams. I think the Raptors have more continuity, and this time around they actually have defense. I think they are at least a second-round team, and if they can avoid Cleveland, they probably have a good shot at making the Eastern Conference Finals. Obviously, they'd hope that they avoid Chicago in round 2 as well. So it's still a lot comes down to matchups, but I think they've built a really good team there. And I think one thing with Toronto, they have a ton of picks. They have the lesser of the Nuggets and Knicks pick this year. They have their own pick. They have the Clippers first-round pick next year. These are serious assets that I think they need to start using some of those, especially now with DeMar Carroll bleed out. And getting a piece that can replace Carroll for the time being and can play in their rotation once he's back. Because I think there's an opportunity with the strength and size Carroll has that you can play kind of a 4-out offense with Carroll at power forward. So if you get another small forward to go along with him, a 3-and-D type guy for one of those picks, I think Masai Ujiri needs to go out and put his money where his mouth is and get that type of player.
That's a perfect example, actually, because that type of player, in my mind, exists, and he's been mentioned in Raptors lore in this year. And when we're covering the last week, obviously there's your teams who have gone on nice streaks. We have Cleveland who's won 6 straight. We've had the Golden State Warriors who won 6. San Antonio's won 7. Surprisingly, Clippers won 8 straight. But talking about
Clippers against a very weak schedule, though. I looked at the Clippers schedule. It was mostly trash they beat, so I don't put much into that one.
But they still won the games they're put in front of them, right? AKA Steph Curry. But if you're looking at streaks and teams that aren't doing so well, it may be a seller in the market. The Charlotte Hornets. We've heard Nick Batum's name come before, potentially in free agency with the Raptors. Could this potentially be a move that, if Charlotte doesn't see their future, they move for some of those aforementioned assets, and then he's in Toronto, gets to have his feet wet, then signs his longer-term deal? Is that something that makes sense to either one of you two?
Well, I was interested when Batum said publicly, I think it was via Twitter, about the interest in playing in an international city like Toronto. Obviously he's never set foot in Montreal, but Toronto does have that multicultural kind of feel to it, and I think Masai Ujiri is really getting respect around the league. The fact that he was able to get a meeting with LaMarcus Aldridge, a huge free agent in the summer, maybe for the first time ever, it's meeting with the top free agent. I think this is a possible home for him, and I think he would fit well in that system. So let's see if it happens.
Would you do that trade like sooner than have to deal with it in the offseason because of the injury to Carroll?
Yeah, I don't know if Nick Batum, I know there was the talk of that, but he's playing so well in Charlotte, and I don't know if you guys saw this, but apparently Michael KiddGilchrist is going to be back. He's way ahead of schedule, back before even March. So if they're still in kind of playoff position and those two gel together, I think they make a major push for a playoff position. And I think that tandem moving forward and the success that he's had probably gives him a lot of incentive, or at least gives Charlotte the home court advantage in trying to sign him.
I feel like I can kind of agree with you, but at the same point, it's the same kind of thing, like the base talent level. It's like, do we really see the Hornets really making it? Like I get what you're saying on defense, but if Nick Batum and Al Jefferson are your best players and Kemba Walker, I get there's talent there, but are they not just like the Atlanta Hawks of 4 or 5 years ago, who were sitting there with, Josh Smith, Joe Johnson, and Al Horford, who are winning games, getting the playoffs, but everyone knows that you're not going to win.
Well, I mean, I don't think that's fair, because that Hawks team was capped out. This Hornets team won't be. Al Jefferson is in the final year of his contract. I think they let him walk. Michael KiddGilchrist is developing into a very, very good player. Nick Batum's playing at a high level. They still have all their picks. They're going to have cap space as well. There's the allure of Michael Jordan owning the team, and I mean, once you sign there, you're basically signed to the Jordan brand as well. So I think that has some pull. So I think it's unfair to compare them completely to the Hawks. I mean, they have a limited ceiling at this time, but there is still the potential for them to take a step forward, both from internal growth and through free agents.
Yeah, maybe. Mark, did you have anything left around the horn that's tickled your fancy this week?
Just the Jordan Brand thing. I read that Michael had signed a deal with the league saying that he wasn't allowed to kind of pressure his players to wear his brand, but I don't know what the stats are, but I think there's a high number of Nike-type guys on that team, so say what you want for that. It's a very unique situation to have, probably the most, the biggest brand in the company be an owner. So it's very unique. It's kind of strange, like how Mario Lemieux owned the Pittsburgh Penguins while still being a player. But Charlotte, I don't know. I don't know going forward. They have to make moves, and it's a franchise that's been on the low for so long, like Brooklyn. That changes are probably afoot next season. Guys will be on their way out.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Well, listen, this has been another action-packed week in the NBA, so our time has come to the end again, but please join us on the social media networks at CavsAnada, at Montreal Market, at Sporting Phil are our Twitter handles. We can continue the conversation. We'll put that in the description below. And remember, as always, for all your basketball info, hoopslounge.com is your #1 place to be. I want to thank you guys for joining, and as always, keep it in the lounge.